Welcome back,
Welcome back,
and
and we're having
to
to
an
to
amazing young lady. Her name is Mumtaz Suliman. She's written a book called A Pinch of Saffron. And I think it's so appropriate that we're talking with her this morning simply because we know that gender-based violence issues are making the rounds pretty seriously. We've heard about the young lady, pregnant, 8-month pregnant lady, being stabbed multiple times and hanging from a tree. So these are all the horror stories, just one of the horrible horror stories that is making the rounds. So today on the show, Mumtaz Suliman is joining us to talk about her book called A Pinch of Saffron. Mumtaz, assalamu alaikum. Are you on air? Can you hear me?
Walaikum salam wa
My screen
rahmatullah.
is frozen here. I'm not sure if you can hear me or not.
I can hear you very well. Can you hear me?
I can't see you. I hope I'll be able to see you in a minute or two. Great to have you on the show. Welcome.
Thank you so much for this opportunity again, Auntie Julie. My inspiration. Thank you for having me.
Flattery will get you everywhere. Alhamdulillah for that. A Pinch of Saffron is really your life story. I guess it's a bit, you've changed the names and identities and possibly even places of where the story unfolds. Were you concerned at all that the people that are in your life, that has crossed paths with you, may take offense that you're telling the story? And I think it's a raw story that hits you in the gut.
Yes, absolutely. But as you've mentioned, the gender-based violence, the sexual abuse, the racism that's been so rife at this present time, I know that my book has ruffled a few feathers. And I also realize that these are the feathers that it's ruffled are the same people that use no to violence or no to sexual, no to gender-based violence and no, all lives matter, Black Lives Matter, are the ones that just lobby in the trend of a hobby. And the idea of us that are doing the protests, you know, in the past we had genuine protesters and now we still have that cup full of genuine protesters. It's to create an awareness with no intention to hurt anybody else, because what happens with our communities is we tend to use this huge band-aid plaster and we just want to cover things up, but we're not really facing the issue at hand. And so if I myself or people like me have written about our stories, it's to create an awareness and hopefully get communities to shift, because it doesn't make sense to want to change a world when you can't change, when you cannot shift the people in your home or your communities or your country.
Okay, Mumtaz, gosh, you one brave lady. Your abuse started at the tender age of 6. It seems to have followed you. It seems to have haunted you for the rest of your life. I understand you are now married, settled. I think, please correct me. I mean, I have met with you and you're young and beautiful, but I think you are a grandmother. Am I correct?
Yes, absolutely. Yes, I am.
Do you worry about your grandchildren and future generations as far as breaking the cycle of abuse, very especially sexual abuse? And because you yourself experienced it, you've written a book about it, and sadly we're in a very closed community. We won't own up and we won't flush out these demons in our communities. We're too afraid of the shame. We're afraid that we're going to hurt numerous people along the way. And you're brave enough to tell your story. But guess what? You end up being the perpetrator rather than the victim, because you have shamed your family. You have shamed the community. How dare you? You're just a woman.
Yes, that is one of the greatest challenges that people who speak out face, because like I said, that people tend to just cover things up with a band-aid plaster, and it's not there. And it's really not to hurt anybody. It's just to teach them, let's move beyond this guilt and beyond this shame, and take ownership, take responsibility. And I think, yes, the fears are there, having growing children. You don't know whether they would be the victims, the abused, or the abuser, because hurt people hurt others. And so it's very important that we teach our children ownership. They need to take ownership. They need to take responsibility. And it's okay. It's really okay if you've messed up. I mean, we all make mistakes. It's like I tried to bake a cake last week. I buggered up a little bit. I didn't give up. I woke up today. I baked the same cake, and I knew where my mistakes were. But you need to take ownership.
Absolutely. Your book has been launched, I presume. I spoke with you just pre-lockdown, and the book, we were talking about the book, it's been published but not launched. When are you planning on launching it? And at the time I spoke to you on another platform, the book had a different title, and I questioned you about the title. I felt that it might be offensive to certain people in the community, or possibly even the general public. What was the original name of the book, and why did you go ahead and change the title?
Okay, I haven't changed the title. The title on the book still remains the same, because I did do a vote on social media platforms, and 99%, literally 99%, had voted the initial title, which contains profanity. And quite simply, I'm not a mop, but it has profanity in it. And the inference of
I'm
the
not
mop is...
something mop. Is that
I'm not
it?
something mop, yeah.
Okay, we're not going to verbalize that word, that particular word on air today. But for the purpose of this interview, you've called your book A Pinch of Saffron. Why?
Yes, so I do have the influence of saffron as well. So the influence of the mop is we go through life feeling not good enough, and we feel like a used and abused mop. And then the influence of saffron comes along. It's a thread that continues through the book, where love and forgiveness shadows. I mean, there's saffron where I was treated when I was visiting the Molanas. They used saffron, and then saffron comes up again when my great-grandmother, who was a victim of racial abuse, had died, and people had said her level of piety was so intense that when they'd left the graveyard, her cemetery had given the scent of saffron. So I think saffron has played a very important part in my healing process.
You've had you come from quite a background. You have a grandmother who was African, as in indigenous African, not Indian. And then you were born and brought up in a small town, which also meant that you had to be shipped off for your early years of schooling. So let's look at the story around your grandmother. Were you, as a little girl or as a family, discriminated against because you had an African grandmother?
Yes, it was my great-grandmother. And I think that will also ruffle a lot of feathers. But again, I say, we are screaming, all lives matter, Black lives matter. And yes, I'm proud of my African heritage. And I think that she was such a good Muslim that you look beyond her color, because she raised a progeny of alims and muftis and qaris, despite that I could have been someone that jumped out of the pot. But her teachings have honored the family.
MashaAllah. When did you realize in your very tender life, and all of this is contained in your book? I haven't read the book, but obviously all of this information was gleaned from a previous interview. When did you realize that you are being abused, that what is happening with you is not right, that it doesn't feel right, but you were helpless, there was nothing you could do about it? And today, as a grown woman, you've given voice to all of that pent-up anger, frustration, outrage, abuse. Have you been able to get rid of all of those very negative feelings? And I've thrown a whole lot of questions at you. Are you at any point going to hold any of those people who abused you to account? Because obviously they've abused you, doesn't mean you were the only one that was being abused.
Very interesting, Auntie Julie. Let's put this scenario. You've got to know your Peter and you've got to know your Judas. You know that Peter has a bad day and Judas has a bad heart. Peter can be restored. Judas must be released. So you reach that point of complete nothing, complete zero, and you need to take your power back and rise. Because you have a choice. Everybody has a choice. I mean, we can't walk around saying my glass is half empty or my glass is half full. Be grateful that you have the glass. The point that got me there was when I'd reached absolute nothingness. There was nothing left, no dignity left, no shame left. I couldn't care less. And I needed to pick up the pieces. I had to make a choice. And my choice was for me. A better life for me, a better life for my children. I knew my Peter and I knew my Judas.
All right. I'm going to fast.
So when you ask me if I'm
backtrack
still with the person was my Peter. Peter had every deservability of restoration.
And that Peter is your husband you're referring to?
That Peter is my husband.
Okay, so you were abused sexually as a young girl. When you married your husband, was he aware of your abusive history, your background? And did that change the dynamics in your relationship? Did he feel you were lesser, or did you feel you were lesser and deserving of the physical abuse or the verbal abuse from him?
I think it didn't change the dynamics from his part. But for me, yes, it was my deservability that was called to account. So I felt not good enough. And so I would attract more abuse. So you'd get different faces with the same form. And it's just because of how you treat yourself. I felt like a mop and I felt not good enough. So I attracted it.
The good news about this story is that even though you were in an abusive marriage, you called it out. You asked your husband or told him to man up, be a man. And alhamdulillah, your marriage has been saved. You've told me that he's a very good man. You love him. He loves you. And you guys were able to work on your marriage. And it's a solid marriage today, alhamdulillah. No doubt he also, no doubt, apart from the abuse that you suffered, through him, he probably is more appreciative of you as a woman now, because you stood up and you said, enough, I refuse to take the abuse.
Yes, he does. He does have a lot more respect for me. I respect him. Our home has a lot of good energy, good vibes, because everybody follows, everybody has shifted. We use tools, prayer, meditation, affirmations, we use visualizations, we use gratitude, we use forgiveness. So we use these tools and everybody's shifted. Everybody has a lot of respect for each other. I live in a predominantly Jewish community, so I have lots of friends that come in here and wouldn't want to leave because of the energy. And I think it's got a lot to do with the tools that I place.
I have to feed off that positive energy. You say you guys have shifted. This was a conscious decision by the family to start working on yourselves. But how do you share the story? How did you share the story without shame or blame, possibly with your children? Because by sharing, you strengthen them and they will never, inshallah, be victims of any form of abuse.
So how do my children, just repeat that, Auntie Julie?
How did you share your story with your children
Oh no,
without blame or shame?
it's very
And you
simple,
know,
Auntie Julie.
mhm,
It's a process. It's a long process. I've been doing this work for 10 years, and I didn't force anybody to change. They just watched me. You know, Khalil Gibran, your children live by what they learn. Your children are not your children. They live by
for
what they
sure.
learn. And that's exactly what's happened here. They watched me. So each one had a different milestone of to experience change. And each one attracted challenges in their lives to push them out of their comfort zone and shift. It's a lot like playing hopscotch, you know. You mark a spot and you stand there, and then you jump somewhere else. So you've shifted. So each one shifted in their own time, and I didn't put any pressure. So the proof of the pudding is with the little ones. They just grew up into so much of love. They didn't have the kind of challenges that okay, they did have challenges. They've lost their dads, my grandson, my nephews who live with me, but they could deal with these challenges so much better than what we could deal. I mean, when Auntie Rona visited us, we were all ready for it, because whatever happens on the inside, on the outside, doesn't affect your inside when you feel whole and you feel complete and you have love and you have anchoring.
Sadly, there are a lot of damaged young women and mothers and grandmothers, and they'll never ever share their story because of the shame. They believe they deserved it. They were in the wrong place at the wrong time, or maybe they attracted it, or maybe they were suggestive and encouraged that abuse on themselves, sexual or otherwise. You were nearly 6 years old when your abuse started. Did you
Yes.
know what was going on with you? Did you try and reach out for help, through some caring adult for that matter? And was there any help that had come your way?
No, not at that time. I probably only started verbalizing at 10 or 11 when the second abuse had filtered. But prior to that, I just thought it was normal. And I was a very disturbed child. But as I grew up, I was a lot less, a lot more careless. So um, I was an extrovert. You know, people who are as extroverted as I was have a lot to hide. So we tend to be just a lot more louder. I guess it's seeking for attention, validation, love. And
You indicated that when you were 6, the sexual abuse started there, and then when you were 10, it started again with somebody else. Have you
yes,
ever called these people out? Do you not believe you have a duty to call them out? And
no,
obviously they're
no,
sick.
not at this.
They are
Yeah,
mentally sick to have perpetrated the type of abuse on you, for them to have perpetrated those type of acts. Why have you not? You've written a book, but you refuse to
I,
call
sh-
them out.
I shifted to forgiveness. I remember 10 years ago when I walked into Ashika Singh's studio for the healing, and I was such a mess. And she said, "You have to shift to forgiveness. You will shift." And I said, "But how do I?" And she said, "You don't have to know how. You just have to be willing." And so that's where the affirmation comes in, and your thought processes change. Because every single day I would say, "I am willing to forgive." And one day I just woke up and felt different. I felt empathy for the abusers, because I realized that hurt people hurt others. And again, it goes back to knowing your Peter and your Judas, who had the bad day and who had the bad heart. Well, the persons with the bad heart, I've just prayed so deeply, Allah, you take care of them. And I
I'm
think Allah
wondering,
subhanahu wa ta'ala has done that.
Mumtaz, I'm wondering that, don't you think we as women should be calling them out? Because we've allowed them to get away with the abuse, they're able to perpetrate on other victims. And if you call them out, you hold them to account. And do you believe, as far as the law is concerned, steps should be taken against people like that, even if it's 20 years later? Or are you afraid of a
No, I'm not.
situation of your word against the perpetrator's word?
I'm not afraid of that. I'm in the position where if it's a Judas, he has to be called out, because that bad heart cannot go around like a cancer infecting others. It has to be called out, and they have to pay for their sins. However, I'm also at a crossroad where I'm in this whole healing spiritual process of not judging. So what gives me the right to judge somebody else when there is a God? Although I do know that we do have the liberty of an eye for an eye, I still firmly believe that I hand all my affairs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because he has never failed me.
Okay. Obviously, you have protected the identities of your abusers in the book. Have they ever tried to make contact with you? How many abusers, apart from your husband, that was a different case, you people have
2.
kissed and made up, and you're in a very strong marriage now, alhamdulillah. But in your past, how many different people actually abused you? And do you think that young girls, little girls who are abused, they've just got a look about them, a haunted look, that just gives a very wrong signal to these sick men to prey on them?
Yeah, I agree with you. No, I haven't had any contact with either one of them. There
They've
were
not
2
reached out to
abusers.
you.
No, never. Not reached out to me. And I guess the fear is, are other girls safe? Have they really changed? If they've not changed, then yes, they need to be called out. Because I think of the little children in my house, and I think to myself, I mean, I do have those fears sometimes if I feel, we walk in the mornings here. We take an hour walk, and my younger daughter is always behind me, but I'm always nervous that, is somebody else looking at her with bad intentions. So that fear is always there. And
What do
yes,
you
they need to
believe
be called
you?
out.
Okay. But you believe you've made your peace, you're not calling
I've
them
made
out
my
at all.
peace.
You're not going to
I've
call
made
them
my
to
peace.
account.
I don't know where my other abuser is, hey? I don't know which part of the world. And I think the worst thing for me to have dealt with wasn't so much even the abuse, because I'd been past that. Like I told you, it became something normal for me. You become
Numb,
immune
immune.
to. Yeah, numb. You numb to that. But what really does get me is society and how society looks at it. Because if it's somebody that's prominent, they hide it. And they make you look like the perpetrator. So
The
you
bad
feel
guy.
more guilt, and you feel, yeah, you become the bad guy. And I think that, you know what, society needs to really up their game there. They cannot stand and chant no to abuse and no to sexism. But when they know somebody that it's happening to in their very own homes, they turn a blind eye on it.
Mumtaz, you've written this book. Alhamdulillah, you're in a place of healing. You're good. Your family is healed. Your marriage was very bad at some point in, some point in time, but alhamdulillah, you've overcome that as well. What do you believe worked for you to make your husband stop the abuse? What
I
did you
think
do?
my
What did
husband
you
loved
say?
me. On his part, he loved me so very much that he shifted consciousness when he saw me shifting consciousness.
Okay.
And I think you are only treated the way you see yourself. So every woman has to take her power back. Every person has to feel deservability and love. And you've got to constantly tell yourself, you cannot say, I'm doing this work one day and then I'm feeling fine. It's consistency. It's like gym. It's working a muscle every single day. I'm doing this 10 years. And there's still days when I struggle to get out of the bed. I have 2 choices. Do I get up and do I do all these 6 things that I need to get through the day? Or do I just go under the wrappers and sleep the day off? You have 2 choices. Depression is a very, very funny thing, because you can just have one thing that makes you regress. One lousy thing. 6 months ago, I was somewhere. And like I said, I'm healed and I'm doing this work for so long. But I went into the shower and there were people working on the roof, and I didn't realize there's no blinds in this place where I was showering. So they'd seen me stalkers. Auntie Julie, it took me a week to get up again and feel like I felt like everything had been robbed from me. And I think that's when I went back in time to the 6-year-old girl and the 11-year-old girl. So yeah, you still do have triggers. That's why you got to work at it every single day.
How do you believe that, who's your target audience as far as the book is concerned? And how do you believe they will find their answers and their healing by reading your book?
My target audience is those who appear to have it together, but really don't know how to get to self-realization. So there's lots of self-help tools. It's a very short read. It's a short book. But when people read it, they'd be able to identify with each one of the characters, myself included there. And then there's a little self-help marker or a tool for them to use. But the important thing is consistency. It's like your salah. You know, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us 5 salahs in the day. If you Fajr to Zohar to Asr to Maghrib to Isha, you have that constant reminder to ground you. And the moment you are not grounded and you've spent too much time in a toxic area with toxic people or toxic food or toxic anything, you're going to slip. So that is why you have your 5 salahs in place. Because when you have that, it's so easy to pray with body, mind, and spirit, and to go into a meditation and to do your affirmation and your visualization and your gratitude and your forgiveness during the 5 salahs. But we take it for granted because we do the up, down, touch the ground kind of thing. And then you're not really grounded. So you've got to be really spiritual in your religious effort. You know, you've got to put spirit into that ritual.
Talk to us about visualization, gratitude, how that has helped you and how you've got to be so constant in that for you to be able to get past the hurt, get past the feeling that I'm tainted, I'm dirty, whatever the case may be, I'm not worthy. How does one get past all of that? I know you did indicate it's a regular, hard, conscious work on your part to make the shift.
Okay, on my phone, I have, I go onto my notes and I have one labeled gratitude and one forgiveness. And in my gratitude, I would start off, Alhamdulillah, by the grace of Allah, I am grateful for. And then I'd list 3 to 5 things. And then I'd go onto my forgiveness notes and I would write, Ya Allah, please help me let go of these feelings of anger or bitterness or shame or guilt towards such and such person who has hurt me or they've done this to me. I lovingly forgive them, or I'm willing to forgive them and I let it go. So these are the 2 notes that I work with regularly. And then when I'm sitting in my salah, I just automatically go into meditation and I do my affirmations and I visualize myself as this happy person in a healthy environment, in a healthy body, with healthy people around me and loving people around me. So this is work that I do every single day with every single salah.
That's the visualization. What's the affirmation? They're not similar.
My affirmations is similar. So when you're saying your affirmation, you saying it out loud and then you visualize it. For example, I love and approve of myself. I am happy and healthy and whole and complete. So your affirmation is positive and it's present and it's changing your thought patterns, because we so easily switch to, I can't do this. So you need to change that pattern. I can do it. The thought pattern. Your thoughts are going to create your future reality. So
okay,
every
talk to us about the little... Carry on.
Every single affirmation you will see become your reality in time.
Give us an example. Give us an example
my
of
happy,
one
healthy
good
family.
affirmation.
My happy, healthy family.
Alhamdulillah.
The happy, right? And the weight I've lost, because remember, when you're so stuck in unforgiveness, you tend to do comfort eating. So I was bordering like 80 kilograms, and I've got a thyroid and I've got diabetes. So I attracted all these things. But my affirmations, I eat healthy, I live healthy, has given me the body I need, the healthy, happy body that I need.
And I guess the important thing is that you've forgiven and you have let go and you have shifted. Very quickly, in a few minutes, we're going to be wrapping up on the interview. You talk about a self-help tool in your book. Can you just give us a brief overview of it?
Your self-help tool is exactly what I've told you: prayer, meditation, affirmation.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's the 6 things. You know, it just sounds so easy when I say it, but Auntie Julie, there are so many people I heal and they'll call me on a daily basis. I can't forgive, but how do I forgive? And I say, just be willing. Just as Ashikai told me, you've just got to be willing. You know, I heard another interview the other day, and it said that we bring pain upon ourselves. I think it was Yasmin Mohahid, where she says, you bring the pain onto yourself because you put everything else before Allah. And when you realize that Allah is the more important than your children, and more important than love or wealth or relationships or anything, you've won the game.
I, by the way, also viewed that same podcast, and it really, shakes you out of your stupor or this comfort zone that you're in, or the pity party that you find yourself in. So yes, we need to come to the realization that we are responsible for our own realities. If you think positive, you attract positivity and gratitude. But if not, you're going to be a victim. But to wrap up then, Mumtaz, when is the book going to be available? When are you launching, or can people get hold of the book, and what's the cost of it?
With COVID that came in, there was a little bit of break, so they were understaffed with the publication. We're hoping July. They have told me end of June, first week of July. It will be released in Amazon, and you can also get it through me. And I think the cost should be around 200 rands, eh?
Okay. I know that the first book hasn't been obviously launched yet, but you seem to have quite a story. And I don't think that everything you need to say and put out into the universe has already been done. Obviously, there's a second book in the pipeline.
Yes, I'm not a Mark 2. A Pinch of Saffron 2 should be. Our stories are never over.
All right. I know that you run some sort of healing program. Very quickly, tell us about it. How do people reach out and become a part of it? And what does it exactly encompass?
Okay, it's based on the Heal Your Life philosophies. And also because I have studied Reiki and I have also studied the Afia healing, I incorporated all those in my programs. So if any particular person wants me, they reach out to me through my Instagram posts, or they have my contact numbers, or sometimes I tend to advertise a workshop if I feel there is a demand for it. I don't charge for it. A lot of people have told me I don't value myself enough. That's why I don't charge for it, but that's not the reason. The reason is that I'm passionate about it, and I believe that I'm serving my Allah through this here. I've been through it. I would never have known pain if I didn't experience pain. There are so many people that sit tight with the pain and the anger and the fear and the guilt and the shame, and they don't want to talk about it. But I want you to know that there are platforms such as yours available, and I'm also available. There are so many like me. Please make use of it. Like I say, you have a choice.
We're under lockdown for now. A lot of people, myself included, like the personal touch. Are you open to interacting on a personal level with people, either at their own home or at your home?
Yes, I am.
With
all protocols in place, the sanitizing and the masks and everything, yes, I'm open to that.
Anything you'd like to share with our listeners and viewers before we wrap up, as regards the book and your healing program?
I just want to tell you all that you are loved. You are loved and you are worthy. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala keep you safe in love and healing and abundance today and tomorrow. Don't let any challenge sabotage who you're supposed to be, your greatness. Don't let any challenge
Mumtaz Suliman,
sabotage that.
lovely talking to you. Much success with the launch of the book, A Pinch of Saffron. Saffron, or is it? I'm not your ... moth. We're just leaving out the profanity, but I think you can, if you're
Yeah, and
sharp
if they
enough,
want to, if the profanity hurts them, they can just use a Band-Aid plaster like everything else in our lives. Just cover it.
Good on you. That's a brilliant idea. Thank you. You go well. Remember us in your duas, and salamu alaikum to you.
Wa alaikum salam. Love you lots. Thank you so much.
That was Mumtaz Suliman. Let's move on then, talking about a book. What a brave lady. Can't wait to get my hands on the book. And of course, 12:32, which means we're going to be joined by Islamic Careline, Anissa Musa, to talk about communication and assertiveness.